So, welcome to Leadership Live. We've got an exciting episode with Moshe David here today. Really welcome to our podcast, Moshe.
Hi, Daphne. How are you doing?
Good. I'm going to start with a bit of a bio. So I'm going to talk about you now, and then we'll dive into our conversation, which I'm very excited about. So here goes. Moshe David is a British-Israeli serial entrepreneur, startup founder, angel investor, and advisor to early-stage ventures. Moshe edits the English tech and startup desk at Ynet, and he'll also be heading up the prestigious Founders Institute mission in Israel, leading a 4-month accelerator for pre-seed startups in 2024, which is an exciting development, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it. Also, recently launched the Iron Links Network, which is another exciting initiative that we can talk about. And I know you've got a lot going on, and I know we are going to be hopefully hitting on all of those points. But just a little bit of background. Moshe was born in Liverpool, England. His career journey has led him from running his own web agency at age 19 into fintech development and eventually exiting his fintech startup. And with current projects include DeFi blockchain loyalty SaaS solution and an AI-powered fundraising platform for startups and VCs. Aside from his work schedule, Moshe trains MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, competing in amateur competitions, avid football fan, and self-labeled foodie, and that's something we have in common. Moshe is the owner of the International Sommeliers Badge, amazing, although now a proud advocate of a sober, alcohol-free lifestyle. Moshe lives in Israel now with his wife and 2 daughters. So as I said, welcome. And I'm really excited because what we are going to be focusing on in our conversation today is the founder's journey and leadership in adversity, being in Israel and everything that's going on. It's really interesting to draw some of the leadership lessons from our experiences at the moment, which is quite an extreme experience of adversity, if you can call it that. And I always like to start with a story. So, Moshe, maybe let's start with something around the challenges, the unique set of challenges that founders experience. And can you think of a story from your history and journey that can shed some light on this and something to learn from for our listeners today?
I think in terms of the uniqueness of the journey of a founder, as opposed to a more brick and mortar kind of career trajectory as an employee, probably always centers around the unpredictability of what's just around the next corner. So obviously you just mentioned here in Israel, war just kind of erupted, and it's all being this pretty vibrant ecosystem of startups and founders and leaders, for all the way from early stage through to like NASDAQ led companies, and everyone kind of finds themselves there. And definitely, if you're not, I won't say it weeds out the men from the boys, but definitely like you find out what you're made of when something like that happens. I personally have not been directly impacted, besides emotionally and obviously my network and friends, etc. But I wasn't called into reserve duty or anything. But it did remind me of a time actually when something did just come up round the corner, just popped up. And put me out of action for months on end. And it's relatable to anybody, anywhere in the world, not necessarily in an area of conflict. And that was actually illness. So I know quite a lot of people probably relate to that. And if you don't, please God, it should remain that way. But I think it was 2 years ago, I came down with very strange sudden syndrome. It's actually called Handel syndrome, and you won't find that much about it on Google, to be fair, because it is that rare, and it affects, it mimics the symptoms of a stroke. I didn't know what they were until people were saying you're having a stroke. I was like, is this what happens when you have a stroke?
Oh, wow.
That was when I could.
What were your symptoms? Like blurred speech, couldn't think clearly, paralysis on one side.
So actually, if I take it back a bit further, years beforehand, about 10 years beforehand, I had this like big panic attack thing. I didn't know what it was. And then since then, it's been very hard for me to know what is real, what's not real. Like, what are you just anxious about? What are you not anxious about? What are you feeling when you... So when this started coming on, I was at the beach and I'm like, oh, you're just going through one of these, like, you know, you're bordering a panic attack or something. Yeah. But it wasn't. It turned out to be something a lot bigger. But yeah, your speech, you start slurring, your eyesight as well. I won't say you because it's like inviting. It's inviting like the evil eye. But I'll say what happened to me is my eyesight as well, sort of like blinkers on both sides, kind of like went inwards and inwards,
of the vision,
blurring and narrowing. And I couldn't speak, and panic was the last thing. I didn't even enter panic. It was just like you just become like, I just became this. Bleh.
So where were you? Were you at work?
I was at the beach. I was in Tel Aviv beach at the time. I was with my wife. I was with my kids, and I was sitting down. On the deck. They were playing by the sea, and I was having a beer. And I remember I was even taking like a picture of the beer, like to show to my friends back in England, like, you know, the good life. And it just sort of came on. And it progressively got worse all the way home, etc., until eventually I needed to be taken to hospital because at that point, I don't remember anything really. Like at that point, you just stop remembering anything. And then when you're taken to hospital, tests were done, all the rest of it. It's all a blur. I don't remember anything, but they couldn't find out what it was. And eventually they sent me home. And then it's just something that kept coming back. And when it happened, it's actually very painful as well because I have huge headaches that would come with it. So there was suspicion that it was like migraine stuff and whatever. But suffice to say, that put me completely out of business. Like not business, out of operational. Like I couldn't work.
Out of action, yeah. So that's interesting. You're bringing up a really important point here. So at the time, you were a founder where were you at the fintech company?
No. So this is actually my most recent, not my most recent, but recent venture, which is in the blockchain space, and it was a really, really busy time as well. It was getting a lot of traction. I was managing a founder / professionals community within that space, the Web3 decentralized space. We had a message to tell the world. We were building products on it and all the rest of it. And that's kind of when it happened. And we had literally just raised some money as well, raised some VC for the project. Wow. And it was flying. And then
so you're spearheading this project, and then this illness comes in and it takes you out of action.
Yeah. And then it would tease you that you're back in action. And then you're not. You're right back in again, and then progressively the attacks got worse and worse, culminating. In it was actually Yom Kippur, which is the Jewish most like the high holiday, the holiest of the high holidays, where everybody's sort of in synagogue, and I couldn't make it to there, and eventually an ambulance came and took me home. It took me to the hospital. And the long story short, it was this random professor guy in Renana who was recommended, we went to see, and he recognized it. He said, I've only seen it like a couple of other times. Wow. Made a cocktail of like drugs to me, and almost immediately, like that was it. I got better. But the whole thing was about 4 months. Wow. We were building a house at the time as well.
So in those 4 months, your capacity to operate was diminished, and you were spearheading, founding this project that you were very excited about. And I think this is really relevant because I think when you start the journey as a founder, you've got an idea, you've got a mission, you've got a message, and then something like this happens out of the blue. What do you do?
Well, there's that sort of in-between stage where you're deep enough in the project, where you've raised money, you've gone through development cycles, you're either working on your POC or going to market, whatever it is, where you don't have enough capital for the company to run even in any capacity without you. Yeah. But you're deep enough in the project where it's not like, oh, okay, well, start again, like, you know, feel better, come back when you've had your sick day off, and then start again. It's because you've got investor money on the line, you've got my own investment on the line, a lot has gone into it, and you've taken people on board as well. In that time I was on a part-time capacity, and developers were like mid-project.
So what did you do? So two questions, actually. The first one is, are you okay today? Has that...
No, I'm okay. Yeah. So thank you. I am okay today. It's like, however rare it is, the syndrome, it's even rarer for it to like come back.
Okay.
So I'm not overly worried about that. And if it does, well, I know there's this magical cocktail of pharmaceutical drugs that will just like have me right in a couple of weeks as soon as I can take it. So I don't think about that.
Okay, so then what happened with the business? Did you have to shut down? What actually happened? How did you overcome? Like, what actually happened?
I did one of those cardinal don't do's as a founder, and
don't get sick.
Well, don't get sick, number one, but don't get into personal debt over your project.
Okay.
Not because that wasn't like a strategic decision necessarily. It was just there was no one to make any decisions. It just went into minus and continued, and then kind of like things stopped.
So did it ever pick up again, or is this something that you had to?
No, I rescued. So I did manage to rescue it. I went back to one of the angel investors that we had, and I spoke to him. He'd had a similar kind of story, not of the syndrome, but he's had one of these sort of like random thing. And because it's funny because he's not a founder and he's not an entrepreneur. He's very high up within a financial institution, who kind of lives his youth, like other things he wished he could have done possibly or never explored doing, such as being his own founder. He kind of lives it through me somewhat. And we have that kind of relationship.
Amazing. So it's almost like a bit of a mentor as well.
So absolutely a mentor. He's a mentor in common sense. He's a mentor in finance. He's a mentor. He's not necessarily a mentor in the startup hustle, the grind.
Yeah.
He's more of a supporter.
Big
He's a supporter
picture.
when it comes to that.
So what was the decision then?
So he financially reinvested enough to get it back on his feet.
Okay, amazing.
And
that's amazing, Moshe, because actually I just want to pause there for a moment, because what you're highlighting is the importance of having mentors or having well, I think there's two things. The one is the importance of having mentors that you can count on and trust and go to for advice. And the second is possibly having really good, solid relationships with your investors. So if something like this happens, they can step in and bail you out because there is a relationship of trust. And I think that's something that's really important.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's not necessarily you say, okay, what's it? And I've been asked this in my capacity as advisory to some startups. And I'm sure I'm going to come across it again, which we'll talk about with the Founder Institute cohort. But, what is your checklist for mentor? What's your checklist for advisor, etc.?
Exactly.
You're not going to put on it somebody that's going to pull me out of debt if I get like terribly sick and whatever. It's not going to be on it. But what you can possibly do is come as near as possible to the kind of character that you would want, supporting you in difficult times and also in good times. And I say support, that's not necessarily financial support. That is that support across the board, as in, you don't want to be afraid, especially if an angel, you don't want to be afraid to say, yeah, you're having a hard time of it, but, whatever.
I love that. I think this is a gem. This is actually a gem. Yeah, this is a gem, what you're saying here. It's to be able to say, I'm having a hard time, this is what I'm going through, and it could be illness, but it could be something else. Yeah. And for me, it's about the relationship, that trust and the relationship that you can feel safe to go to your investor and say, here's what's going on for me. I imagine that for a lot of people, there's an element of needing to show that you've got it together, needing to show that you're in control, needing to show that you are marching on. But sometimes things happen where you just have to bring people in and have those open, honest conversations about what's really going on. It's fundamental. It's fundamentally why I advise that when raising early stage capital, and if you are looking to a VC or early stage funds, try and get as well, with as much clout as possible, an angel that has your back. And he's not going to just be looking at the bottom, the bottom line. Someone that's put his money in because he believes in you and
he will help you through adversity, he'll help you whatever it is. He will celebrate your successes with you, and he will live and hold, not sounds romantic, but quite literally hold your hand through the more difficult times. And that doesn't need to be someone who's necessarily very business savvy. That could just be somebody who is there for you in a way that doesn't make you feel that added pressure of, okay, I'm now answerable to him financially for something that if he kind of just knew on a personal level, like there'll be more leeway. That doesn't really happen with VCs. That's an dangerous thing.
Yeah, and I'm just also thinking about your situation and this health challenge, where I know a lot of times with startups and founders, a big challenge and a big question is around balancing your work and your home life. And, when you throw illness into the mix, then you've got a lot of stress on your personal life, on your family, and a lot of stress on the business. And even without a health crisis, it's already stressful enough because there is so much going on. So maybe let's talk a little bit about that balance. What can you tell us and advise us about that?
The thing about that is there's a misconception where people look towards a founder and say, okay, how well can that person manage his personal life and his work life? Countless articles are written about, the overload, the stress, the category of personality, the kind of people, the ADHD people, the extreme people that end up doing these things and bringing themselves into this fighting against tidal waves of adversity just to be a founder, just to build something and feel proud of what they've built. Very rarely does it take into account the other people in the picture, the wives, the children, and everybody else. I mean, it's between the lines. It's it's a last paragraph. It's a byline. It's not. But in actual fact, and I know it sounds so, everyone will be different in this, depending on what their personal support network looks like. You can have a very, very strong support network when things are going well. When they're not going well for you, that's where you take a step back and go, okay, how much of the long haul am I in this for? Right? Because it's not about you anymore. You can't do it by yourself. How supportive is this person? How much personally, there will be those people, who would support you blindly, but that they're just relying on you. And then you've got this added pressure of I can do what I want, but I know it's not the right thing to do because it's blind support. And then you've got, I think somebody who is unafraid to make you aware of their stop loss is extremely, extremely important. So you can be as supportive as you want, but you are aware of their stop loss and what's most important for them.
So what do you mean by the stop loss? Are you talking, sorry, so let's just get clarity here. Are you talking about your spouse and your at-home family? Or are you talking about, because I know working with startups, there's the responsibility towards the family, there's the responsibility towards staff that you've hired, the responsibility towards the investors. And when things aren't going well, that burden of responsibility is huge. You'll end up putting a huge amount of hours into the business, and then other things fall behind. So tell me. I'm
referencing family.
Okay.
Primarily when it comes to this kind of thing. I've got a little bit of a different and more simplistic outlook when it comes to other people that are working for a startup. If you're working for a startup, my philosophy goes, if you're working for a startup, the risk that you're taking upon yourself is it's a slice of entrepreneurship within itself. It's a slice of that journey within itself. That's why people take stock options. That's why people have equity. Take equity when they're part of early stage team or later stage team. They're part of that journey as well. Yes, the onus is on the director and the CEO to make a success of it because you've got all these people. But just that cannot be the number one driving factor behind what's going to make.
So you're saying you're all in this together, you're all taking an element 100%. Of the risk, you're all pitching in for each other, and that's also part of the trust and relationships. But for you, you felt the ultimate responsibility was towards your family, your wife and your children.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to, if we broke it down into a simple equation, it would be 100 workers, minus one wife, equals zero startup, right?
Right.
That's literally the way it'll be. Like, she is the what's that card in Uno, like where just everything like gets obliterated.
Oh, yes.
That's what she decides to know.
You have to take the whole pack.
Yeah, 100%. I'm very, very thankful that I've got a very supportive wife, but I know her limits as well.
Yeah.
And we've had conversations over the years of honest and open conversations about, okay, how are we quantifying success, not just in terms of business, but how are we quantifying success in our life, in our partnership, in our marriage, in our family. I know it didn't sound like it from your bio, but I started the founder journey quite late, actually, especially in Israel. I didn't start the entrepreneurial journey late, the founder journey. So building something new, something for my own, legacy, something that I want to build. Right, having a web agency is not building.
Not a
startup. You're building incremental things for other people, but you're not building product. You're not leaving behind. You're not. It's a bit spiritual to look at it like leaving something behind, but quite literally, that's what we're in it for, supposedly.
And I want to just draw on the thing that you said there, because again, I think it's important to actually not too dissimilar from the point we were making about the angel investor, and it's the relationship, the trust, the openness, the conversations. Let's talk about what does success look like in your marriage? What does what conversations do we have when we have hard times? Again, what I'm seeing from my experience is a lot of founders tend to hold a lot in because they know that they have a sense of responsibility and they don't want to always bring their spouses into the conversation so as not to worry them and not put more pressure on, because there's already a lot of pressure. So being able to have those open conversations, how are we going to deal with things when it gets tough? How are we going to deal with things if financially it gets tough? If we're arguing a lot because the stress levels are high? I think those are all real questions. And
those are, that is everyday reality.
The conversations are where there's value. It's not about always finding the solution or getting out of it. And I think sometimes that's the misconception, because founders like to solve problems and they like to get to the other side. It's not always about solving the problem and coming with a finished product. It's actually having the conversation with your spouse along the way to say, okay, this is what I'm going through. I need your support here.
Yeah, I think the reason why I agree with you, and I think it's a really important point that you bring up, this similarities between the support network that you have from investors and advisors, and that you have from your family, is if you've got the right ones, they'll be very, very truthful and they'll be very forthright with you, and they take the journey with you, and by that I mean they're living it with you. It's hard for you to build something and feel like you're just one step away from big success, and that one step is always there as time drags on, right? That's the founder's typical thing. Like I'm almost there. The time is dragging on, and you want to say I'm nearly there, but only people that are in that close support network will feel that you're almost there along with you, but they will feel the time that it's dragging on more acutely than you will, right? Than you. So they will, right? So that's what I'm talking. So when I reference having that stop loss, in fact, my investor who I mentioned earlier, he was very honest about, like, at one point having a conversation with me about maybe you want to consider pulling the plug or pivoting in this way and this, that, and the other, like knowing full well that might mean that's it. His money's gone, and that was a big thing for like whoa, right?
Yeah. So actually, you were saying, let's look at what's going to be good for the business rather than how I can kind of reclaim my money in the best possible way. 100%, 100%. That's amazing.
And the conversation, just knowing that their priority is you and the journey, as opposed to what you originally set out to do and whether you've achieved it or not. It's massive. It's everything.
Yeah.
But
Moshe, I think we've touched on a few important points. And I know one other thing that you've mentioned, even just, going through your bio, the amount of projects that you've got going on in one time is phenomenal. So and I see that a lot as well. A lot of things, a lot of what's the expression? Things on the fire, hands on the fire, a lot of hands on the fire going at the same time. And one of the challenges is also prioritizing. So, there's the need to bring in an income versus what's really your passion project, the thing that you're most excited about, or, I think that's something that also people can relate to. So talk to us about that. How do you manage? How do you prioritize? How do you find that particular challenge, and how do you deal with it?
I suppose different founders will have different outlooks on it. I'm not great at it. I just to be completely honest and forthright, I am not great at managing the priority of what you're passionate about and what's gonna pay the bills at the end of the day necessarily. And
because you're maybe drawn to what you're passionate about, and yet you've still got to keep the thing that brings in an income.
I also just think it's a macro state of mind. As a founder, as an entrepreneur, you probably find that you're not thinking about tomorrow anyway. You're thinking macro. You're thinking, where's it going to go? What's it going to go?
Yeah.
So when your brain is kind of operating on that level, you can get involved in something you're passionate about, this, that, and the other, without necessarily considering when that first sort of like, if you have a CFO, he'll be like smashing on your door, like, well, okay, where's the, show me the traction, show me the check.
And I think that maybe also comes
level whilst you're still plowing on to the macro.
So what we do see is founders have this big vision. They have this passion for the project that they started, or the startup that they're starting. And together with that, it's having the team that can support you, because it's not about the founder doing everything. And it's about a team. And I know also at the initial stages of a startup, it's everybody does whatever they need to do in order to keep the thing going. But also not taking it all on yourself and seeing how you build a team that actually supports you.
I have an added challenge to myself on top of that probably equates to it being as difficult as I find it sometimes to manage that priority, is that I've actually got ADD, not ADHD, ADD. And I only just this year found that out through it was actually from my daughter. I was watching my daughter's behavior around the same time as I was struggling, like at her age, 6, 7 years old. And I was noticing similarity in patterns and stuff like that. And I was like, to me, it seemed far more obvious that my child might have ADHD. But then again, why am I so familiar with that?
Wow.
And then
so you could see it in her, and that helped you spot it in you. Wow.
Yeah. I didn't spot it. Well, I did some Googling, and obviously the behavior indicators within adults are different than where they are in the children. But if you had it as a child, you have it as an adult. Anyway, so I went to a psychiatrist and got evaluated over 2 or 3 hours. It was like this long report. So by the end of it, she was like, okay, you don't have to hyper because you just sat there and not moved for like 3 hours. So
okay.
But everything else in terms of things. But what that did do is it opened my mind to, obviously I did what I usually do. I just bought like 5 books on the topic, became an expert, like a mini expert in it. But it helped me understand myself in the sense that why I like getting involved in so many things. And why I find struggle sometimes to loop back, do
and complete.
And complete. Like that is a constant struggle. If you have one of the books I read on it talks about hunters and farmers. If you have a farmer to your hunter, it's someone that basically realigns.
Right.
Helps realign, which I'm very thankful to have that within.
Okay, fantastic. So we call that the visionary integrator model. Well, not we. There's a model that calls it the visionary integrator model, where you have the visionary and I just want to say, I think a lot of the people listening will be able to relate to what you're saying, because as founders, entrepreneurs, you tend to have a lot of ideas, be the ideas person, the vision person, want to do a whole lot of things at once. And I think there's a common element of many probably being ADHD or ADD to some extent. And the model of the visionary integrator says that the visionary runs off and does the idea generating and the relationships and the bringing the fundraising and all of that. The integrator is the one who makes sure that things are implemented and followed through. And it's very rare to find a person who's got both the visionary and integrator within them.
Has got that balance, possibly. Although I'm not buying it. I think Elon Musk has got, not comparing myself in any way whatsoever to Elon Musk, but his visionary, but his also ability to execute.
To execute and to get people to do what they need to do in order to make the business a success. You can never do it alone. That's the truth. You can never do it alone if you want to get to that kind of scale anyway. So you've got to understand that. Again, my approach is understand where your strengths lie and where your passions and skills lie and bring those together and focus on those, because that's going to get you to the ultimate success, and not trying to fix the stuff that's really challenging or really difficult.
Yeah, super important. The way you've kind of summarized that. I used to say, like, if an advisory capacity to the startup, it would basically just create a list or book of all the mistakes that I've made, and hey, go and learn from that. Like, that's my job done. Like, from an advisory perspective,
right.
Because impulsiveness, running off in one direction, without
impatience, high frustration levels when things aren't getting done at the pace that you want them to get done.
So that's kind of like, yeah. Had I known that about myself a lot sooner, I would probably, yeah.
And I wanted to touch on that point as well, Moshe, because also I work with a lot of founders, a lot of CEOs, and yes, there's quite a large number of them who have ADHD, and I find they've been diagnosed at a later stage in life.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is that the relief of having that diagnosis, because all of a sudden you understand there's a reason for the challenges and the struggles that you've been dealing with. Instead of thinking something's wrong with you and why can't you just get yourself together or be like this one or that one, you're saying, oh, there's actually a reason, there's actually a diagnosis, and there's something I can do about it. And that, I think, is relief and incredibly helpful in terms of also getting it together.
My number one advice has gone from, here, look at my mistakes and don't repeat them, to just learn about yourself, right? You might don't go looking for symptoms, but just
I love that.
Take time to learn about yourself.
I love that. Moshe, I mean, you are now speaking my language, because I say that self-awareness is imperative for leadership. If you don't know who you are, regardless of, it's not about the diagnosis. Like, for you, it was the diagnosis, and I'm sure it's still a lot of things that you're learning about yourself. We're all on a lifelong learning journey, but the more self-aware you are, the more you know yourself, the better you can lead, because you understand your strengths, your weaknesses, you understand what people are experiencing and how to relate to them and how to bring them along and get their buy-in. So yeah, self-awareness, learn yourself, know yourself is absolutely key.
You start to recognize your own behavioral patterns.
Exactly.
You think, and I can now, not necessarily from a bird's eye view, but I can, there are strong indicators when I know that I'm going to make a mistake. Like, you're being impulsive, you're being this, like just take, and then you can learn like little tricks to help yourself. But if
recognize it, yeah.
At some ways, you're bound to basically repeat those mistakes. Yeah. And for a number of years, I did repeat some of the stupidest mistakes, and it all evolved around, being overexcited and impulsive about, a rollout here or a feature here or take it to this market, and then like dead ends that I've ended up sort of being explored through. Yeah. So 2 things. 1, get to know yourself, like you said. If I was sort of like right about now stepping into this process, I would definitely enlist the help of somebody to help coach me to understand why I do the things the way I do, why I am.
Well, I would say it's never too late to hire a coach, Moshe. At any point in the journey, it's useful. But I agree, a coach can get you to a level of self-awareness. But
Yeah.
there's two things you said, because for me, there's the self-awareness is part one. Part two is what tools, tips, actions, habits can you cultivate in order to manage? Now that you're self-aware, it's okay, well, how do I want to really show up, and how do I want to cultivate the good habits and really be the best leader that I can be? So that was my part two, and I jumped in there. But what is your part two?
No, well, I can't remember, but that's the way the mind moved. But no, it literally happened to me Thursday, this time last week. But I knew the way I'd reacted in a conversation to somebody about something was very reminiscent of the way I always do, and even when you do repeat the mistakes, like you're instantly aware and you know what's going to become. So you have more time to rectify like stuff that you've done because you're aware of what you've just done.
Exactly, so, you notice it, and then you know what are the strategies, that you can use in order to
something you can. So long as you recognize. Like you're not always going to be able to circumvent it happening, but you're definitely going to be able to influence the outcome.
Manage it. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So that would be my number one advice to anybody taking on this entrepreneurial journey. If it's straight out of uni, who people don't have time to think about who they are, they just know what they want, right? That will come with time and maturity, I suppose. Later on in life, people considering career changes. I'm a big fan of Kim Perel's book, Pivot and Jump. Both of those books. Very cliche in all the things she said, but they just ring so true and pure. Like I don't care. It's just, it just is.
If it helps, do it.
So just to bring that full circle back to what you asked me in terms of working in how to prioritize between the important stuff. That's the part two, I would say, is try and find co-founder or someone that works with you or under you or whatever it is to help yin your yang or whatever it is. To try and
absolutely. Love that. Yin your yang.
But to do that.
That's complementary. It's not two people who are exactly the same who are now co-founding a startup. It's where are your weaknesses and who do you hire to plug those gaps? So knowing what they are. I know we wanted to speak a little bit about, we talked about leading in adversity in terms of, your illness and how that threw a spanner in the works for you. But I think also being in a war situation, I think you might even have some examples to share from people that you're advising or people that you know. What's been the impact of this literally overnight war that has hit where we live, Israel?
So it's still in the process of, let's just put it this way. I don't think that the majority of the country has processed or absorbed the reality, their current reality. What they are doing is they are excelling in action stations, right? Like all hands on deck. They're excelling in that capacity. And
I think that is definitely something that's come out. This all hands on deck. Also, I think the hands are fewer because people being called up to reserve duty or whatever it is. So maybe more, less hands trying to keep the same amount of work going.
It's interesting. So you mentioned in the introduction that I write as well for One News, which is the biggest media publication in Israel, and it's got their English edition. From a mental point of view, just from like it was very, very hard for me to just do my day-to-day work.
I've seen that too.
I needed to, obviously the ADHD like kicked in big time. The this wanting to do things, make change, solve problems, like you said, and there's abundance of problems just there. Here, deal with it, right? So everyone's kind of in the same place. And I went and I started a series called High Tech at War, and it was so I don't know if you came across it. So and what I would do is I would go to what I have been doing is going to speaking directly to the CEOs and directors of some of the flagship, the biggest companies in Israel that started as so we've got Oracle, Innoviz, etc. And that's on the top level, and all the way down to smaller founders, which I didn't really need to interview, just talk to myself, I guess, in the mirror. But I did talk to VCs that, early stage VCs about what they're talking about. And specifically, the theme that always came across from these leaders, the cream of the crop, was that we are no longer leading our business. We're now leading something bigger that has a greater impact. So from an economical perspective, right, how does our venture's success or failure impact the greater economy of a country at war? And that became like something that they perceived. So when we talked earlier about the responsibilities that founders feel towards their workforce, etc., this became on steroids. This is like, okay, and that is a theme that will go through all the way down to the smaller founders in Israel, in the country at the moment. They feel like the world is on their shoulders right now, and they must succeed. This is the action station kind of
but there's an economic responsibility here.
It's in their mind. It's part of the win is success. It's strategic battlefield maneuvers to make sure that we make that next round, or we deliver whatever it is we said we need to deliver to our clients outside of Israel. The perception of the economy needs to be strong. We need to be strong, and that drive by far made up for the, on average, 15 to 20% of the workforce that intact. And it's not just them, by the way, called into active duty. It's the spouse and partners of people that have been called into active duty. Well, how do they get their mind to it? So there is a lot of escapism that I've seen as well, like plunging straight into
just
work.
Dab in, as a distraction. I think that's also tough. I think you mentioned earlier that the initial shock of the whole situation caused people to lose focus. And I think it did need a period of readjustment and what are we doing? And definitely what we saw is a lot of taking action, but also a bit of dispersed focus or distraction into things that are going to help you not think about it, perhaps.
I think it all ties in. I think the founder mentality to be able to say, okay, my goal is much bigger, allowed them not to regular day-to-day activity. Regular day-to-day activity will ensure the continuation of their operation, right?
Yeah.
But go beyond that is like, okay, how do we make it more of a success? Okay, we've got a new mission now. And I think it fed into a lot of people's natural spirit, entrepreneurial spirit okay, new problem we need to solve now. We've got 20% of our workforce is gone. We've got people potentially pulling, if it's smaller companies, term sheets off the table. We need to now come up with a new narrative. There was it's like one huge pivot as a country made up of thousands of people pivoting to cope with it. And I think really, because it's a country of entrepreneurs and founders, I think what we were beginning to see is unprecedented, I want to call it success, but results of what that looks like when you have like a mass awakening of founders who started their venture 5 years ago, and that initial hustle's gone. That it's now board meetings, it's now this, that, and the other, and suddenly they're called into action. And I can give multiple examples of these, founders within big corporations who have suddenly gone, right, we're opening a war room, right? And then it's like, boom, galvanize. How do we support him? How do we send a bed there? How do we do this? Like, you're supposed to be running a tech company. Like, no, it was far bigger.
Yeah. So I think if I draw from what you've said, that there was all of a sudden the sense of a much bigger purpose, that we're not only holding up the economy of the country or building our business or defining success in terms of the success of our business. It actually became bigger than that. Our country needs us. How do we use our skills to now see that we're contributing beyond our business to what's needed at the moment? And I think that is an amazing leadership agility or flexibility that enables you to see what's needed now and step into that space. And I'm going to link it to your Iron Links network, because that's how we all, like I have written about it and I've said we've become accidental advocates overnight, because it's exactly what you're saying. It's not just about our business and marketing and running and operating. It's actually what's required of us. And what's required of us is to take a stand and use our voice. And that's what we've become. So if you want to say just a couple of things about Iron Links.
Yeah. So just before I introduce what Iron Links is, how it came about, I mean, it's so fresh, like it could be anything right now. But to loop that background again, when we talked about, and to tie that into what we talked about, employees of a startup feeling ownership and a slice of that entrepreneurial and founder journey and being part of it. Something else that I've noticed whilst talking to these companies was, if you do have 20% away in reserve active duty, then the mission became, well, we need to make sure he has a job when he comes home.
Yeah.
And that was on the micro kind of level where everyone's coming in like on a day-to-day. And on a macro level, there's actually my office is in one of the tall rises in Tel Aviv called Midtown. And it has a huge digital screen on it. Huge. And I'm just going to exact wording because I took a picture of it. It says, and this sums up, I can even see if I can show it to you here. I don't know if you can see it on the screen with the thing.
Okay, there, yeah.
A picture of a lion. And what that says is strengthening the economy. And then underneath it says, that doesn't mean we've forgotten. It's part of the victory.
It's part of the big picture. I know. And I think that's so important. Part of the victory is bringing peace, creating security in our country, bringing the hostages home, and maintaining the economic strength so that people come back to jobs and a vibrant country that is important. So maybe just one or two sentences about Iron Links, because before we wrap up, and I've got one final question for you because we've got a chain of questions that I do. So give us a couple of sentences on Iron Links.
So Iron Links essentially is an advocacy community of business leaders, because the difference this time round is it's not a spat, it's not a back and forth. This is essentially all out war, and there's been no grey areas within the country. There's been a understanding and awakening of trying to make sure that the perception of Israel's economy, the reality, but also the perception of the reality that Israel's economy is vibrant, strong. There's hashtags such as, no matter what will come, Israeli companies deliver. And what it does, Iron Links essentially provides an HQ for that kind of advocacy in terms of content, understanding how to get that message out to their own network, where there might be people sitting on the fence worried about, well, should I put my next order in, or is war going to reach Tel Aviv next week? Like that kind of like perception. I'm not talking about who's right, who's wrong. It's not about, that's not what Iron Links is in this conflict. And Iron Links is just is a reiteration of the strength of Israel's economy and the people that essentially of driving force behind the economy. These a nation essentially of founders and leaders all the way through. That's what Iron Links became. We had our first in-person event last week, which you came to, and it was just the democracy of it is open discussion, trying to work out and make sure that we support each other as businesses during this time. So that's what Iron Links is, and I invite anybody obviously to pop along. It's a LinkedIn community where most of that work and advocacy takes place. So that's what Iron Links is.
Awesome. I love the initiative because I do think it links our way of business as usual to a bigger purpose, and that is standing behind Israel's economy and Israel's right to exist. There, I've said it. Moshe, what I do? Yeah, sorry. Do you want to say one more?
Every war has it. You've got the famous picture of the ladies rolling up their sleeves and
and it's an area that unfortunately we've had to
very much on that. Yeah. So what did you say? Short fire question.
Yeah, that's it. So the last question before you can just share where people can find you is I have a rolling question from one podcast to the next. So the previous guest left this question for you to answer as the next guest, not knowing who you are or anything about you.
Okay.
And this is the question. So it's a bit of a surprise one, right? If you look 5 or 10 years into the future, what do you think the business of the future looks like? How's it different from today? What do you think is a major shift? And what would be the implications for a CEO? So if we now cast our minds forward 5, 10 years into the future, what is going to shift on the business landscape?
So I'm supposed to say the decentralized economy.
Okay. Who said you're supposed to say that?
I'm supposed to say that because that's the arena that I operate in. But I think before we've kind of been overlapped somewhat by the emergence of generative AI. So the impact over 5-10 years is going to be directly as a founder to your workforce and to the ease in which competition can arise from what anybody is doing. So you got an idea, you've worked 5 years building it, etc., and generative AI can spin out what you've done quite quickly, and hop, you got yourself some competition.
Yeah. So what does this mean for the CEO? How do CEOs or founders manage this? How do they prepare for this?
How do they prepare for this? I think founders, projects that are being built need to be far more liquid than they have been in the past. So in terms of manpower, that will come naturally because AI will be doing a lot of those tasks, from coding all the way through to actual research. So research and development. Okay. And founders usually building something new. So those are those are two of the three pillars behind it. So being liquid in terms of where your project goes and how fast you can pivot will be helped by AI being able to help you do it.
A resource,
being a resource, but it's gonna be essentially. I've always said it's gonna be the problem and the solution, right?
Yeah,
and the smartest
as it often is.
It will create problems for you whilst providing solutions to you at the same time. But if you're not adaptable to those solutions, then you're going to lose. So
I think, good point. I think it's the adaptability, being able to not being stuck in it's got to be this way or that way, but being able to adapt and move with it and flow with it and what's provided and as the problems come up.
I think I answered you specifically to people who will be building startups during that period. If you're asking me people that already have projects, you need to learn as much as you can about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and find ways to integrate it into your existing system.
Agree. Not to be scared of it, actually.
That is the number one most important thing I would probably say in business right now. Like, how is it going to affect you? Everyone needs to look at it and go, okay, this is it. How is it going to affect me in terms of competition? In terms of, is my market going to change? Right? Are people going to need what I'm selling anymore? And even if they do need what I'm selling, does then my competition just like rise up? And, you know, how fast can I pivot? How much money is worth investing now into something that I predict technology is going to do in 3 years?
Yeah, exactly.
Why would I do that? Like, this needs to be taken very seriously. I don't even know myself right now, but in 10 years time, that is absolutely, that's my answer to that.
How can people get hold of you, and what is the one thing that maybe you haven't said that you'd like to say and leave our listeners with?
No, so you can get hold of me via my website. Links to everything, really. All the projects, links to...
And we'll put that in the show notes. What is your website? Just say it here.
It's just moshedavid.xyz, moshedavid.xyz.
Great. And we'll put that in the show notes as well, so people can access it.
I'm most active on LinkedIn. I'm not on any of the other socials, really, unless it's for the MMA stuff, like you said. I need that for my escapism. So I try and keep those pure. But LinkedIn's my place to go. And what was the next question? What was the other question?
What is one thing you want to leave our listeners with? It could be something you've said or something you haven't yet said. What would you like to leave them with today?
I don't know if I haven't said it, because I think I have, but maybe in a few different ways I've said it over the course of the conversation. But if you're a leader and something comes around the corner, war breaks out or you get sick or something like that, there is a much bigger role to play in leadership than what you believe you're doing today. Right? There is always something bigger around the corner that will require you to step up to. And if you don't perceive yourself as being that person to step up to the plate on a bigger level than just your project, then start learning to do it.
I love that. I think it's such an important point. There's always a bigger picture. There's always something beyond the business that is going to require your next level up or step up, and to actually think about this ahead of time. So you're running a business, you're running a project, your mind is full of it, and you're running around like crazy trying to make it work. But always keep in mind, like, what is that bigger something?
And part of that is just getting to know yourself.
Yeah.
Learn about yourself, get to know yourself, and
hire a coach to do that, to help you do that.
Something around the corner, and be prepared, be ready, know yourself, and succeed in whatever anything throws at you.
Right.
My advice or question or answer. Don't know what it became in the end. Anyway,
thank you. Thank you so much, Moshe. That was absolutely awesome. Really great conversation. And I think there's actually so much more to talk about that we haven't touched on, but it's okay to leave people wanting more.
Institute we didn't talk about. That's fine. You can find information on the website.
Yeah. We can also add that to the show notes. So thanks so much, Moshe. Thanks for joining us today. It was an awesome conversation, and I really look forward to continuing it offline.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on and chatting.